Good morning. My name is MeeHee Kirby, for those of you I don't know. And a couple of weeks ago, Darren asked me to share just my experience of being a minority in America, being Asian American, which is a little daunting, if I'm honest. I'm used to speaking out of the word or talking about ministry. I feel much more confident in that. But when he asked me right away, my first thoughts I had, I could list just tons of kind of what are known as microaggressions that I grew up with or I deal with on a regular basis. It's like I don't even notice these things anymore. It actually takes like conscious, like, oh yeah, that is a microaggression. I had to actually be taught almost like these things that happened in childhood were because of my ethnicity or my race. But it was something I was so used to, it wasn't like, oh, this big thing. For example, like I can't tell you how many times people I've known or strangers, kids and adults, have come up to me and been like, ooh, look at your eyes, can you see? It's like, that's just a normal experience for me and probably my kids as well. I can't tell you how many times I've had kids and adults come up to me and speak Asian to me, ching chong chong, and bow down to me, and then laugh and walk away as if that's good enough to do and just leave it at that. This probably speaks to my generation. I'm 40 now, but as a kid, there was so many adults and teachers that called me Kim because they just thought, well, she's an Asian girl, her name must be Kim, and I'd have to correct them all the time. Things like that were just part of a normal experience for me. There's a lot of those small microaggressions, but a couple years ago, right around the time that COVID came out and Kung Flu was being coined for COVID, I was with Tatum, actually. We were in Michael's, and we watched a customer blatantly deny being served by an Asian worker at Michael's. And then we went back in to check on that Asian worker, and this woman who had denied that Asian worker saw me and Tatum walk in, looked away from me, backed up so as not to have to walk by me. So there are things like that that happen on a fairly regular basis, but like I said, it's just so common I don't necessarily even think about them anymore, which is sad. For me, actually, growing up with those kind of things, I grew up in majority culture. I was actually adopted, which I think Darren is talking about next week too. But all my friends really were majority culture. My parents are majority culture. I have a brother who's adopted from India. He had more, I would say more of like the harsh kind of signs of racism. He would be followed around in a store when he was shopping because he has really dark skin. So they assumed, you better keep an eye on this guy, he might be shoplifting, things like that. But growing up, I wasn't like deeply wounded. I wasn't consciously like, oh, this is hurtful to me. Honestly, I was more embarrassed as a kid. I just wanted to get rid of those things. I didn't want to acknowledge those things. And so what I internalized was being Asian was something to be embarrassed about, was something to not talk about. It was something to be stuffed down. And if I wanted to fit in, I needed to be as much like other people as I could be. And I couldn't change the way that I looked, but I could not talk about how I looked. I could not talk about how being Asian was different. And so, you know, I started to make light of it because I didn't want to be serious about it. I didn't want people to draw attention to it before I could, so I would make jokes about it. And I would be the one to bring actually the racial comments and the slurs to people just so I can make light of it and we can move on. And I could just say like, yeah, I'm the same as you. We're all the same. So much so that my friends started calling me a banana, you know, yellow on the outside and white on the inside. And again, that message just internalizes like, okay, yes, I need to show everyone that I'm white, I'm like you, I'm normal. And that's what you internalize, that being Asian or being different, another ethnicity is not normal. It wasn't until like 6 years ago, honestly. I'm 40 now. So when I was 34, I heard a speaker at a conference talk about stewardship. And he says, we as believers, we often talk about stewardship, how we steward our time, our intellect, our money, our resources. And he said, what about how we steward our ethnicity? And the Holy Spirit just spoke straight to my heart because I had not been stewarding my ethnicity at all very well. I had been making jokes about my ethnicity. I had been stuffing down my ethnicity. I had been denying God just the opportunity to speak into my ethnicity and talk to me through that and work through me through my ethnicity. I had been saying no to God, and not only hurting myself in that, but hurting other people. I had been promoting stereotypes and promoting these false assumptions of the Asian community and hurting my Asian brothers and sisters. So God spoke to me through that, and ever since then, 6 years ago, I've been on this journey. I feel very young in this journey, being a minority myself, to just start to be looking into this and thinking through, like, God, how would you want to speak to me in my ethnicity? God, how would you want to use my ethnicity? And I will say having kids has helped me think through this a lot, because as I think about my 3 beautiful daughters, the last thing that I want for them, and I cannot control the microaggressions that are and will happen to them. People will make comments. People will, I mean, we brought Juji to a park when she was like a 2-year-old toddler, and this boy, he's a kid too, and we're all learning, but he just pointed at Juji and said, China baby, and laughed. I cannot control those things that will happen. But what I can do is try to instill and reinforce in them that being Asian is beautiful and God-given, God-created, and it's not something that they need to make jokes of and laugh off and shove down, but something that they can be proud of and experience God's voice in the midst of. I'm not sure how to do that fully yet, so I'll need your help in helping me even help my kids. But that is something that's helped me think through this a lot. And I guess maybe the last thing I'll say is, for those of you who don't know, I'm a missionary, I work with Crew. And one of the passages I always come to, because I have a huge heart for the nations, I love talking about the nations, and so I've always talked about how when we see Jesus face to face, every tribe, tongue, and nation will be represented before him around the throne. And just probably 3 or 4 years ago, it hit me. God spoke to me and said, do you see that? Every tribe, tongue, and nation will be represented around the throne, which means every tribe, tongue, and nation, ethnicity matters. It matters to God, and it's significant to God. And I had this realization, this might sound so silly, but I think subconsciously in my head, when I thought about that, when I thought about getting a new body, a perfect body in heaven, I think I pictured it being white, that I would be white in heaven. And he spoke to me and was like, you, I believe, will still be Asian in heaven. And that was really significant, because that means it's significant that I'm Asian now and that I will be there standing before him. I don't really know, I don't necessarily have a way to close this. I just feel like I want to say, like, being a minority does not mean I have the monopoly. Like, I understand all things. I know these conversations about race are so hard, especially right now in our country. It's so political, there's so many things. But I think for me, I'm on a journey. I'm learning what this means, and I think, if anything, what I want myself, my kids to learn, for us as a church to learn, is that ethnicity matters to God, how we steward our own ethnicities matters, and how we treat other people and view other people's ethnicity matters in the sight of God. So thanks for letting me share. Thanks for being a safe body for me.